Cassie recounts her experiences with a mysterious board game that her family discovers after moving into a new house. Cassie's older sister, Kim, has a history of protecting Cassie from bullies. The family faces tension due to frequent moves, with Cassie's parents announcing another move. Upon arriving at their new home, Cassie and Kim discover a locked room containing the enigmatic board game. I was always a quiet kid. I never liked trouble and never looked for any. This didn't apply to my senior sister, Kimberly. She was very outspoken and always knew what to say and how to say it. I was 13 at the time and Kim was 16. I always called her my role model because she inspired me and stood up for me when people tried to bully me. There was that one time when my bully, Sharon, pushed my food off my table in the presence of everyone in the cafeteria. I didn't know Kim saw everything. After school, she walked up to the girl and asked her, "So you're my sister's famous bully?" Sharon was too stunned to speak but summoned courage and said, "Well, I don't know your loser of a sister and don't think I ever want to know whoever that is." Sharon said that and tried walking away, but my sister Kim pulled her hair back, quickly took the glue in her bag and rubbed it all on her hair. Sharon was so shocked to speak. Then Kim screamed in her ears, "By the way, the loser's name is Cassie, and I don't want you messing with that loser again. This will be your first, last, and only warning." Sharon immediately ran off. I was just there too stunned and pissed that I couldn't do just the simple task that Kim did effortlessly. Our ride back home was quiet, but as we came down from the school bus, I hugged her like I hadn't seen her for a year in tears and thanked her. "I don't want you to let people bully and make jest of you. I want you to be strong enough to stand up for yourself," she said and hugged me back. By the time we got home, Mom had already received a call from the school about what happened and how they needed to see my parents the next day. My mom asked my sister what happened and immediately understood. My dad, on the other hand, came home and started making a fuss and also warned Kim to keep her nose out of my business and leave me to stand up for myself. The next day, they came and sorted everything out in school. On getting home, they told us that we would be moving soon. This would be the 6th time we were moving in 2 years. I wasn't shocked by the information, but Kim, on the other hand, was furious about it. A car driving on a highway. "Why is it taking so long to get there? We have been on the road for a day and a half now and still there's no sight of the place we have to adapt to." "I think you should relax a bit, Kim. Honey, we're almost there, right?" My dad did not let her finish her sentence before he told her not to ask stupid questions. And then their unusual argument started in the car as he was driving. That wasn't the first time they were arguing. There was a time it was very bad and my mom ran out of the room crying, and he came, held her neck and dragged her back into the room. We finally got to the place and it was huge and looked nice. Once we entered, my dad said, "Ta-da! I bought this house for us. It will be our very first house turned home." I was surprised and had to pinch myself because it felt like a dream. I loved the house so much and all the space I had to do whatever I wanted. Then my parents held hands and said they had something important to tell us. "We're having a baby. We're having a baby." Kim wasn't happy with the news at all and ran upstairs. They both then asked me if I was happy I was expecting a little sibling. I was indifferent about the news and didn't care much about it. However, I said yes and ran off to meet Kim. She was in one of the rooms crying. As she saw me, she started shouting, "Why now? Their marriage is breaking into little pieces and they're planning on having another baby." I comforted her and went to check out the house. I loved the house, but I noticed there was a door shut close in the house. I asked my dad about it and he said I shouldn't worry about it. He said it was because the past owners left some things there and someone was going to pick it up. The fact that the room was locked freaked me out, but I didn't think much of it. School bell ringing. The next day, Kim and I were enrolled in the town's nearby school and everything was looking good for me. A week passed and nobody had come for the stuff in the locked room. I was so curious about what could be locked in the room, so I tried peeping from the keyhole one night, but it was too dark and I couldn't see anything. The next morning was a Saturday and I was happy to sleep in. I woke up, got ready and headed out of my room to get something to eat. I noticed the locked room was opened. I forgot that I had to eat and went straight into the room. It was a bunch of dusty covered stuff. As I was leaving the room, I tripped on something only for me to look down and find a board game. This type of board game looked foreign in my eyes. I had never seen that type of board game before, so I took it and asked my mom if she knew how to play it. She said she had never seen that type of board game. I asked my dad and he said the same thing. I rushed into Kim's room to show her the game and asked if she would like to play with me, but she was weirded out about the board for some reason. I, on the other hand, was very interested in the game. I kept the game under my bed and decided to let it be for now till I could figure out how the game was played. Rain falling heavily at night. I was asleep that same night when I felt something move under my bed. I turned on the light and checked. Nothing was there but the board. However, this time it was opened. I remembered closing the board before I put it under my bed. I wondered how it got open, but convinced myself that I probably forgot to close it. I closed it and went to bed. The next day, I went to the supermarket with my mom. We came back that afternoon only for my dad to say he found a game manual and asked if it was the game I asked about. I checked it out and it was the manual of the board game. Lo and behold, it was rules and regulations. Oh, what kind of game is that? Can we all play one of these days? My mom asked as she carried some of the groceries inside. On the other hand, I was still confused about the game, so I told her we would play after I figured it out. I went up to Kimberly's room and we both figured it out together. A cafeteria with students in it. I didn't have a tough time in my new school. Everyone was kind to me and I made a friend, Anthony. He was nice to me and we hung out most of the time. Tony was an observant person. When he found out where I stayed, he asked me how I could stay there when the people who owned the house had mysteriously died. I didn't want to make anything out of it. When I went home that day, I asked my mom if she knew that the previous owners died in the same house mysteriously. My mom had been unaware of this information. I asked my dad immediately after he came back from work. He admitted he knew, but it meant nothing and the house is perfectly fine. Well, are you sure about that, Dad? Cassie has been having difficulty sleeping at night. Kim asked as she entered the conversation and I immediately wondered how she knew, seeing that we slept in different rooms. Cassie baby, is that true? You didn't mention any of this to me, Mom said as she walked over to me to hold me. I told her that it was nothing and it was just a little insomnia and I sometimes wake up randomly in the middle of the night. Well, I'm sure you're just homesick and your body is getting used to your new home. Now, you all should stop all this talk of the house being a burial ground and relax. My dad said this and walked upstairs to his room. I looked at Kim and asked her how she knew. Cause I've been having the same issue too. So when I wake up, I come to check on you and find out that you are also awake. But you never notice it. Once Kim said she hadn't been sleeping well, I immediately became worried. I left and went upstairs. Before I entered my room, I overheard my mom scolding Kim and asking her why she would say all that in front of me, knowing it might make me worried and scared. They went back and forth and Kim ran upstairs heading to her room, so I quickly went into my room like I never heard all that they said. The next morning. Hey Cassie, calm down so you won't be late for school. I had already dressed up for school that Friday morning. I went down to quickly eat and head out. My mom tried telling me there was nothing to worry about. I told her I was not worried and I knew we were fine. I looked at my mom and it seemed she had added a little weight. I remembered that she was pregnant. With everything happening at once, I forgot I would be having a new sibling very soon. Cassie, what of that board game? I thought we could all play later this evening when everyone was around. I think it would relieve everyone's stress and make us bond more. When she said that, I immediately remembered the game and told her it was a great idea. I quickly rushed to school. Once it was break time and I had the opportunity to talk to Tony, I told him about the sleep issue and he said I shouldn't worry about anything. I then told him about the board game and paused for a bit. Board game? What type of game? He asked in a curious tone. I told him how the game was. He too hadn't heard of that type of board game and said I should try it out and see. A clip of the sun setting. Cassie! Call your sister Kim and come with the game. Let us all play. I don't think I want to play with you all, my dad said while changing the channel. My mom stood up, collected the remote and switched the TV off. My dad was so furious, but my mom convinced him to stay and play the game. I placed the board on the center table and we all surrounded it. I told them there were only 2 rules, which were don't interrupt another player and never try to get up when a player is trying to complete the given tasks. Okay, let's do this. I think I'll start first to warm things up, Dad said as he collected the dice from me. He rolled it in his palm and blew breeze into it like it was some magic trick he was about to perform. He rolled it on the board, but it ended on the next turn, which was my mom. My mom laughed and took the dice, rolled it on the board, and it landed on a burning sculpture. We were wondering what it meant till my mom stood up like something was controlling her. We all started shouting, "No cheating! You're not meant to stand up when playing, except your task involves standing." I am not doing this on purpose. It's not me doing this. What do you mean it's not you doing this? Stop this prank and sit down, Christy. We all thought it was a joke and were laughing till she went into the garage, took my dad's bottle of fuel he used for engines, came back, poured it all over herself, took the lighter and set herself ablaze. At this point, we all tried standing up to stop the fire, but a force drew us back. We were screaming and shouting, but it was like we were stuck and couldn't get up. We all watched my mom burn to death. My sister was next, but she didn't want to touch the board after what had happened. I mean, who would? But that was the only way for us to be able to get up. She rolled the dice and it ended on 6-2 on top of a hand drawing. We were wondering what this one could mean when my sister immediately stood up, found the heaviest thing she could find and started bashing her hands 8 times with it. She was screaming and in tears all the way. I was so heartbroken when she completed the 8th one. She came back to the spot she was sitting. They didn't want me to roll, but if they had to suffer, I too had to suffer. I rolled the dice and it ended on the next turn. I immediately broke down in tears because I was watching the people I loved suffer. My dad stood up with force. I can't take this anymore. I won't take this. He grabbed the board with force, ran outside and threw it in the waste bin. As he came back in, we all watched the board magically appear back to the same spot and the same point of the game. My dad screamed in pain. I looked up and found out his leg was broken and I could see his bone. I asked him what happened and he started screaming in tears that he didn't want to die. He took his finger towards his eyes, gouged them out and fell to the ground. We immediately screamed and we both tried standing, but it didn't work. We agreed that we won't move a finger to play and it was the worst mistake we made. A clip of blood pouring down the floor. Cassie, what's going on? What's happening? Kim asked in panic. She was being controlled to pick up the dice and roll them. It ended on a knife. She stood up, walked to the kitchen, and picked up a knife. At this point, I was screaming at the top of my voice, "No! No, Kim! Please don't leave me! Try to fight it! Don't let it win!" She tried struggling, but ended up stabbing herself 12 times before falling to the ground. The board closed shut and then disappeared. I stood up and ran to Kim. My eyes were swollen and flooded with tears. I tried keeping her alive, found the phone and called 911. The last words she said to me were, "Burn that board." And she gave up. It has been 5 years since this happened, and I am locked in an asylum because no one believed me when I told them about the board and what it did. To this day, I regret finding that board, and I pray nobody ever finds the board.